Hi everyone, I hope you're all doing really well and welcome back to another episode of Life of an Artrepreneur. In this episode I'm going to be talking about branding, which obviously is so broad, it covers so many different topics. So I have written quite a few notes for this one, so I'm not actually sure how long it's going to be, but I'll try and keep them concise but keep it fairly chatty as well, because branding is quite a big sort of, not scary topic, but it just covers so much stuff that it can feel a bit overwhelming. I definitely feel overwhelmed at the minute because I got back from Crete, I think 2 days ago. I got back on Friday, today's Sunday, and I'm just like, where do I even start? All the messages, the Patreon stuff, podcast. I'm going to record 2 episodes today, so I'm going to do this one and then another one straight after, just so I'm organised. But yeah, Crete was so nice. It was really hot. Like, such a nice place. Our hotel was in a really nice area near Heraklion, so where the airport is. It was like 30 degrees every single day. Just relaxed for a week, really, which was needed, I think. But yeah, I do feel a bit overwhelmed coming back to everything. I've just finished making some notes for the episode that I'm going to record after this one, which will go out a week on Wednesday. And I thought I'd talk about, you know, what it's like to be a self-employed artist and go on holiday and take time off once in a while, and how that impacts like my art business and whether I still get paid, whether I take work with me and all the stuff like that, which I think will be quite fitting for quite a lot of you who are probably, you know, you've got holidays planned, you know, it's the summer in the UK, so a lot of people do go on holidays in the next couple of months. So I thought that would be quite fitting. So that's going to be out on a week on Wednesday. So I've got written down quite a few bullet points and notes for this episode, but it is going to follow on nicely from last week's episode where I spoke about, you know, engaging with your audience by like putting yourself out there, showing yourself on stories. And I touched a little bit on brand recognition as well, because it all kind of links together. And also on a side note, so many of you have been talking on like reels and kind of putting yourself out there a little bit more on stories this past week, which has been really nice to see. I remember seeing Catherine's reel last week when I was literally lying on a sunbed just scrolling in Crete, and she did more of like a behind the scenes video with a voiceover, which was her first ever one. And she said it was because of my episode last week that inspired her to kind of put herself out there a little bit more, which is obviously amazing to see. And that's really what I want this whole podcast to be about, really. Just, you know, inspiring other artists to put themselves out there and just learn other bits and bobs that I've sort of learned along the way. But that's Catherine Bay's art on Instagram, by the way. She does like really gorgeous coloured pencil artwork. So let's get on to branding. So in this episode, I'm going to talk to you about what it actually means to brand yourself as an artist. You want to be really distinct with your logo, your packaging, how you present your work and yourself as an artist on social media. It's a combination of a lot of things, really, branding. It covers just so much stuff. That's why I've got literally so many notes here in front of me. I don't really know where to start. But just little things, well, not little things, but simple things like sticking with the same fonts and the colours and styles throughout everything. So once you've sort of started your art business, tried a few different things, experimented a bit, because I think after a while you just naturally want to level up your like professionalism in terms of how people perceive you when they type in your business into Instagram or they see your website, for example. Everything matters and everything just links together. I didn't have a logo actually for quite a while, especially when I started. I didn't really think about anything to do with that. So I didn't have a logo for years probably. I had business cards, but they didn't look great. I used to get them from Vistaprint. I found somewhere a lot cheaper that does them now, but I used to get them from Vistaprint, like a pack of, I don't know, 50, 100, like the lowest quantity I could buy. And they were awful. I think I'd update them every year, and every year they'd get a little bit better, and I'd kind of see a little style coming on that I eventually liked and I kind of used throughout the rest of my packaging and everything. But initially you don't really know what you like, so I think experimenting and sort of finding your feet a little bit first is quite important. My packaging wasn't the best either, but I guess you just learn as you develop and your business grows and changes. I now have a logo, you'll be glad to know, which is literally like 2 B's put together. So it's like B. I mean, you can't see what I'm doing. If you're watching on YouTube, then you can, but it probably doesn't make sense anyway. But literally 2 like fancy written B's, and then the last one kind of curves round, so it's in like a bit of a circle-ish. And I don't really know if I like it that much, because it's not exactly clear to someone who doesn't know what my business is, like what my business actually is, if that makes sense. It's not exactly screaming pet portrait and wildlife artist, just having two B's together. But it does obviously link to my name, Becca Barron. So I don't know, I might keep it for now, but I have thought about changing it in the past. And to be honest, if I kind of continue going down the teaching route and do less pet portraits, then the fact that I don't like have a dog or something in the logo probably doesn't really matter. Because my brand will be more about my name, I guess. So BB would obviously be quite fitting. So I might keep it, I don't know, but that's what I mean. Like, that's just one example of how you're constantly adapting to fit your like values and what your business is in terms of like your colours, your logo and everything like that initially. You definitely want to be memorable with how you market yourself and your work, because I think branding is all about like provoking that emotional response in someone, and you want people to remember you as well. Going back to the logo thing, one of my patrons, Louise, she sent me her logo design that she recently created a few weeks ago now, maybe a few months ago, I can't remember, the weeks just fly by. But she literally created a little logo that I'd never seen anyone do before. It was like two paw prints, but they were made of two hearts that kind of overlapped, but they were like paw prints. And I just thought it was such a cute, like clever idea. And it straight away says that her business is something to do with like a dog, or it's animal related, and probably something emotional or memorable with it being two hearts. And that's exactly like what pet portraits are. So she's portrayed that perfectly, really. And so many other artists have like lovely logos as well, even incorporating like a pencil or using the name, like playing on the words in the name, changing different letters to include some clever like visual aspect. Or there's so many things you can do with a logo. But at the same time, if you're just starting a business, that's probably one of the least of your worries. Like, sort out everything else first. Just kind of get going with it before you worry too much about that. But if you've had your business for a while and you've not really thought about these things too much, then hopefully this just makes you think about how everything kind of links together, and you want people to look at your business straight away, or look at your name or your logo and have an idea of what your business is. Even with colours, I think you want to stay consistent with them through your website, your packaging, social media, like your art studio, even like down to your thumbnails on YouTube. Like, everything needs to look consistently the same. I think Shannon does this so well. And I'm laughing because I've literally given Shannon a shout out in every single episode so far. I'm just using her as a good example. But yeah, I promise it's not intentional if you're listening to this. A lot of you will probably already follow Shannon Mullen, especially on YouTube. And when I think about Shannon's brand, I immediately think sage green. Sage green everywhere. Like, it's memorable, and you can look at a post on social media, her YouTube thumbnails, like a random like page on a website, and everything's just very consistent, and it looks like it's all part of the same brand. Like, you think of sage green and you think of Shannon. That's what I do anyway. The colour of my like brand I've had for quite a while now. It started as like a light brown, and it's kind of progressed into, if you're watching on YouTube you can see this, but sort of, it's not really lilac, it's more of like a mauve, like a browny purpley colour, which sounds disgusting if you're listening on the podcast, but I promise it's actually quite a nice like neutral colour, and it just matches everything. I try and do the same through my website and thumbnails and stuff like that, but it is difficult when you're doing so many different things to stay consistent with colours over everything. You kind of need different versions of those colours that are slightly lighter, slightly darker, and eventually once you build all that up with your packaging and your business cards and your stickers and everything like that, it all just kind of comes together as your sort of brand. But yeah, colours are very important within all of that as well. Branding though is just so broad, and it's also like a long time thing that grows and changes as your business starts to grow and change as well. And until you've kind of figured out your values and realised that like you are your own niche, so anything at all that makes you stand out, you almost want to lean into that, as weird and unusual as that may be. You might not want to, it might feel uncomfortable, but that's what's going to help you sort of stand out against everyone else that's sort of doing similar things, kind of like your USP in the art space. I think branding is also about how people perceive your art and how it makes them feel. So think about your brand image, think about your whole like story, your journey, like your personality, how you're coming across. I think it's important to show like vulnerability as well. A lot of people find that so relatable. I remember in the first episode of this podcast, I actually spoke about my journey as an artist and how I got to where I am now, from literally just liking art and drawing at school to now. And to be honest, I don't really think there's anything weird or unusual about my sort of journey that kind of makes it stand out against everyone else. I think it's just the fact that I'm openly sharing it and a lot of people can relate to that. And I was shocked actually at the response of that episode. I know it was my first one, but just how many other artists like messaged me saying that they resonated and related with my story, even though it was fairly basic as far as like journeys and stories go. Nothing like major has happened really. It's just nice to kind of look back and see that development from just liking art as a child to now. But yeah, people love kind of following along the journey from the start, so it's important to share your story. I think no matter how boring or weird or uncomfortable it might be, there's always going to be someone that can kind of relate to that. I remember Conrad telling me from the start about the importance of branding, because he did business marketing at uni, which covered all stuff like that. So he said, you know, if I want to really scale a business, then building a personal brand is everything. So you want people to see your work or hear your name or see your face or your website or a post on social media or a thumbnail on YouTube and just automatically be like, yeah, that's so and so. Like I was saying before about the sage green with Shannon, you just automatically put two and two together. And again, that's not happened overnight. That's just her staying really consistent with it. Once you've built or established your brand as an artist, you stand out and you're memorable. And I think a lot of artists rely heavily just on their work to make them stand out, which sometimes it does, because it depends if you've, you know, created your own technique or found a really unique, completely different style that not many other people are doing. But I think the ones that you remember in terms of like artists and artwork are the ones that kind of put themselves at the forefront. So you remember the artist as much as their artwork most of the time. And I've written some examples here of people that I think have done this really well. Mr. Doodles, who's an artist, very, very like funny name, but that's kind of his whole thing. Like he literally wears suits that he's drawn like doodles, very, very particular style. His whole house is exactly the same. Like he puts everything on social media that's just doodles on everything. His wife is literally called Mrs. Doodles. Like they just play on that whole brand. Rendale Designs, which most of you have probably heard of. Hannah Dale, who owns Rendale Designs, is incredible at getting all of the products in every single possible garden centre shop. Like she knows exactly who to put her products in front of. They're very much like looser animal watercolour paintings, and they're on everything, like cushions, loads of kitchenware. So if you go into a garden centre, you'll be buying like little bits and bobs for your house and it'll be there. It's literally everywhere. And they're so cute as well. I bought one for my friend for Secret Santa last year, and they're like 2 owls together. So she's got some really, really nice designs, but she knows how to kind of market herself and where to put it. Another artist that I've written down is Devon Rodriguez, I think you say. I don't know how to say his second name. Devon Rodriguez, I think. Rodriguez, something like that. But you've probably seen him on TikTok. Basically, when TikTok first came about, he was straight in there with his art content, and what he would do would be to go on the tube in New York and he'd sit there with a sketchbook like opposite someone, and without them knowing, he'd kind of sketch them, and it'd be so realistic. So within like a 5-minute, 2-minute sketch, he'd just like give it to them at the end, and their like his whole content would be like their reaction. And because a few episodes I said people love watching people, like that's a good example of that. Like you'll probably sit and watch that whole video that he's put on TikTok from start to finish because you want to see the whole process of him drawing it and how it kind of comes to life, and then you also want to see the person's reaction at the end. So yeah, those videos absolutely blew up, and now he's drawing like loads of celebrities and he's got exhibitions everywhere in New York. Like he's absolutely smashed it. But that's another way how you can use social media, I guess, as well, to just absolutely catapult your business. But again, it depends what you're doing. And the last one I put is Carla Grace, because she's my favourite wildlife artist. But I think, you know, she chats all the time on stories and she shows so much behind the scenes, and she doesn't kind of glamorize it. She's got 2 young kids as well, And I think her husband now works for her and does quite a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, so she can spend more time actually painting and doing the artwork, because obviously if you don't have someone doing that, it takes time away from you doing the actual artwork. But I just love how professional she comes across, and everything looks very like neat on social media. Her website looks good, and then she's also got that like down to earth side as well. So yeah, more of like a personal favorite than like a really, really good example of branding. But yeah, there's so many artists that do it really, really well and do it a lot better than others, but a lot more out there than others. So you don't necessarily need to be like Mr. Doodles and do something so extravagant, but you do need that little like USP or something to kind of lean into that makes you a little bit different than everyone else. I think you can actually like overthink a lot of this stuff as well, especially when you're just starting out. Nothing is going to be perfect initially or exactly how you envision it, like at all. Don't spend too long thinking about the perfect logo, and instead just start and worry about all that stuff later on once you've found your feet. And to be honest, I think once we've been running a creative business for a while, so if you're someone who's been running one for a few years or so, you automatically do a lot of this like branding stuff automatically anyway, like without realizing. So by showing the behind the scenes and by showing your face and talking on stories and interacting with your followers and like kind of showing off your personality, a lot of what I've been talking about kind of comes across anyway. I think really, really lean into being yourself, which is quite scary at the start, but that's probably the best advice I could give an artist that's just starting out. Like, lean into being yourself completely. I think initially we tend to like imitate other artists that are doing similar things that we want to be doing, because, you know, we're out there looking for inspiration and seeing what we could be doing. So we tend to like imitate similar content that they're doing. You know, you think if they've put this sort of content out there, then I'm going to do the same and hopefully it'll do just as well. But I think when you actually spend time figuring out what makes you completely different to that and leaning into your quirks or trying to be more yourself, that's actually the best way to be, especially on social media, because it just makes you stand out from the crowd. What's worked for me actually is kind of sharing both the highs and the lows and those like vulnerable moments, because I think they're so relatable to people and you're not coming across as like everything's great all the time, because it's definitely not. Like, there are weeks and months that are more difficult and not as successful as others, but then that's business, isn't it? Like, it's always going up and down, but as long as it's going gradually up, that's the main thing. I think being your genuine self at first is scary. It's uncomfortable because it's on social media, it's online, and, you know, putting yourself out there and having to be open to like judgment and comments is scary, but that sometimes comes with building confidence after a while. Like, you do get more comfortable the more that you do it. The first piece of content that you're going to put out there, if it's of you kind of speaking and showing yourself, it's probably going to be awful. It's not going to be the best, but you've got to start somewhere and just build on that. Once you've done the first one, you've got that like baseline then, so anything that you make after that just gets like better and better and better, and you keep improving. And as I've said in previous episodes, the art community in general is just such a like positive, supportive, encouraging place, and people just want the best for you. So I know that it is scary at first, but like I said in last week's episode, once you've done that first one and you've overcome your fear of talking to a camera and putting it online, then it does get better after that, and you'll just naturally start to feel more comfortable and it'll look more comfortable on camera. You won't look as awkward, because I'm the most awkward person on planet Earth, and you want to see my videos when I started, like, horrific. I'd have to retake something about 50 times. I'm not joking. But yeah, you just kind of get more used to it the more that you do it. I think more than anything, people buy from people. Obviously, it depends on like what your business is, and it's not the same for everyone. It's not the same for everyone who's an artist, but generally you could say like when people like buying from people and when people like buying art, it's 50% the artwork and 50% the artist. But again, it's hard to say that because it's affected by so many different factors. Like, for example, if your work was in a gallery, then the buyer probably won't see you as the artist, like they won't see you in person. But they might resonate with your story, they might love your whole journey or what your artwork's about, and that might be one reason why they buy your work. So it kind of is like 50% the artist, 50% the artwork. But Obviously, it depends on different situations, but that's just generally sort of speaking, which again links to the whole branding thing, because it's just like how you present yourself as an artist, what your work's about, what you stand for, your values and everything like that. And my hands are going absolutely crazy on this video. I don't know what's going on today. Maybe I'm showing off my tan from Crete. I've really caught a tan, very, very bronzed. I definitely needed it. I've spoken quite a lot in this episode about how branding is how something makes you feel. And a good example of this actually is Nike, or Nike, if you're one of them that says it as Nike. They're not just selling you a trainer, they're selling you the marathon, they're selling you health, running, like sports, all stuff like that. It's based off emotion, not the product. Similar to how you're not just selling a print or a commission, you're selling like the time and the care and the memorabilia that's attached to that particular product or service. Like the whole service of the pet portrait commissions, like how you speak to the client, keeping them updated with everything, how it's presented when they open it, listening to their story about the pet. And if it's one that's sadly passed away, it's a memorial portrait. Even though they're paying for technically a product that you're giving them, it's got so much emotional attachment to that. I think branding and marketing actually like overlap quite a lot, but they're also not the same at all. In the most simple terms, I like to kind of think of it like this and differentiate it like this. So in the most like simple terms, if you ask someone to go on holiday with you, that's marketing. You're asking someone to go on holiday with you. If you're giving someone a reason why they should come on holiday with you, that's branding. So it's the difference between like how you're selling something and then like why, the reason why, like that emotion to it is the whole branding thing. Marketing yourself as an artist falls under so many different topics, just like branding does really, but like marketing yourself is like email marketing, social media marketing, networking, how you present yourself. And they're all topics that I would like to talk about in future episodes, definitely. And some of you have actually messaged me with ideas for future episodes and like requests and suggestions, which has been really good for me, because I'm like, keep them coming. So thank you for giving me some inspiration for future episodes. I can't actually believe that this is the 7th episode, and I feel like I've just like scratch the surface with things. There's still so much that I want to talk about, and my goal of reaching 50 episodes, I feel like it's going to be a breeze because I'm literally flying through these episodes and I've got a list of future ones. So yeah, if you do have any requests or you want me to speak about anything in particular, then let me know and I'll add it to the list, because there's so much to talk about. Even with this episode, I could have made it into like 5 different parts, but I thought I'd keep the first one like broad. I mean, I don't even know how long I've been chatting now, but I feel like my voice is starting to go, so for probably quite a while, and I've still got another episode to film after this, or to record after this, so hopefully it doesn't go. It tends to do that. If I've recorded like 2 back-to-back episodes, my voice starts going dead croaky, and I'm like, just please, like hold in there until we've finished the second one. But yeah, so that's basically the end of all of my notes and my bullet points, what I've written down. But thank you so much for listening again to another episode of Life of an Artrepreneur. Thank you for all your comments, your messages, and just words of support each week, because I do read them all and I feel like it gives me a boost for the next one. So yeah, thank you so much. And I'll be back next week with another episode, which I spoke briefly about at the start of this one, basically talking about holidays and how I kind of deal with going away for a week and having time off, and whether I still get paid from that, and whether I schedule things and do bits and bobs whilst I'm away or not. So all will be revealed in next week's episode. But yeah, thank you so much for watching Life of an Artrepreneur. If you're watching on YouTube, remember to give it a like and subscribe to my channel to see more art-related content, podcasts, tutorials and vlogs. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, then I'd love it if you could leave a 5-star review, because it really helps to kind of push the podcast. But yeah, thanks for watching and listening, and I'll be back next week with a brand new episode. I hope you all have a lovely rest of the week.